7 years. That's how long Katie had been trying to get pregnant. She had been diagnosed by most doctors 7 years. That's how long Katie had been trying to get pregnant. She had diagnoses that most doctors would just panic over. She had an autoimmune disorder, which was Hashimoto's disease, PCOS, endometriosis, low sperm count on her partner's side, and still she wasn't taken seriously. Doctor after doctor minimized her symptoms. She was offered just generic solutions, and when things didn't work out, they just said, how about you just keep trying? Until she found us and the HOPE program, and finally got a plan that made sense for her. And now, right now, Katie is pregnant after her very first embryo transfer. If you're new here, welcome to Fertility TV. I'm Dr. Marc Sklar, also known as the fertility expert. And for over 22 years, I've helped women like Katie take back control of their fertility by creating a personalized root cause plan that leads to real results. In this video, you'll hear Katie's journey, and I'll be jumping in along the way to help you understand the strategy behind her transformation and what was really going on in her body and how we helped her finally get pregnant. So let's dive in. All right, so now let's hear from Katie.
So my name is Katie Schneider, and my husband is Andrew Schneider, and we are 30 weeks pregnant. And before we got pregnant, we have been trying 6.5 years to get pregnant.
Long time.
And first of all, it took several years to get doctors to take our issues seriously. You know, I went to my OBGYN and she kind of told me, oh, you're fine. There's nothing wrong with you. Your AMH is, perfectly fine. You're good. It wasn't until about 2.5 years after we had started trying that we learned that my husband had severe low sperm count. I think it's called oligospermia. And it was not only that, we also found out that he had what's called a genetic translocation, which is when 2 of his genes are swapped in his DNA, which meant that he himself was perfectly healthy, but that his sperm production process was impaired. He was still making healthy sperm, but just not a lot of it. And so
I gotta stop right here. 2.5 years. She knew something was wrong. They both knew that something was wrong. They reached out to their providers, and it took 2.5 years to start to look a little bit deeper beyond where they were to get even some remote semblance of an answer. And it wasn't even a complete answer. It was just like they actually decided to do some testing on her husband. So it shouldn't take this long. If you've been trying for over a year or a year and a half, and you're kind of spinning your wheels with your OBGYN or your primary, and no one's taking you seriously, you need to find different support. Okay? Anyone who's been trying for any length of time without results or repeated failures needs to get proper support by someone who's going to investigate deeper. That is exactly what we do in the HOPE coaching program, because we want answers, and we want answers as soon as possible. And we want to give you the best results, which is what they deserve. And the only way to do that is to have real answers. Before we continue to hear from Katie, I do want to make one additional point. Your fertility is not all about your AMH. I mean, her OBGYN said, you're fine, everything's fine because your AMH is fine. There is much more to fertility care and having a healthy reproductive system than AMH levels. And that's what we're going to hear more about from Katie right now.
We kind of did everything we could. We got him on supplements and things like that. And then it wasn't until a year after that, we found out he had severe sleep apnea. And so we got him a CPAP. That helped, but we still were having issues. And it was at that time that I consulted a NAPRO physician. She basically tested me for a bunch of things, and she found that I did have things wrong with me or causing part of the problem. I had Hashimoto's with TPO antibodies that were around 190. I had autoimmune PCOS, and we eventually learned I had endometriosis as well. And so all these issues for me were autoimmune in nature. Basically everything was like one big, ugly autoimmune storm.
So it took an additional year. So now she's 3.5. They are 3.5 years into their journey before they really start to have a much more complete picture and understanding from both sides, right? Because now we realize that there was issues on both the male side and the female side, both of which were severe situations, right? You've got multiple autoimmune conditions on her side. You've got the multiple male factor situations on his side. All of these things need concerted, focused, individualized plan and attention, and they need time to see change.
And so, we kind of worked diligently on trying to, first to get gluten-free, and that helped, but it didn't, quite move the needle as much as we wanted. Still weren't getting pregnant, weren't getting any kind of positive pregnancy test suitable. And then in August of 2023, we we'd read about and interviewed with Snowflake's embryo adoption along the process of our infertility journey, because we knew that with my husband's transportation, it was possible that we would never get pregnant. And we had doctors tell us that. They're like, you might, but you might never with this.
Absolutely.
And so we had interviewed them. We had a really good experience. And so in August of 2023, we decided, heck with it. We're just going to go for it. We're just going to try to, adopt some embryos here and see how it goes. And in the context of that, I told my husband, I said, I think I'd really like to hire a fertility coach. I said, I'd like to hire someone who is going to support me as we go through this embryo adoption process. And as we, if I need extra tests or anything like that, because it's just really hard sometimes to get tests from your doctor. They kind of push back a lot. And so we started interviewing multiple fertility coaches, and it was clear kind of from the get-go that Dr. Sklar's program was by far one of the most comprehensive and highest value programs out there. Like, there were a lot of programs we met where they're like, well, we'll help you for 3 months, and then you're kind of on your own. And it was like, no, we've been on this journey 6.5 years.
I hear that. I want you all to know I'm with my members for life. I'm here for them for life. 3 months is not enough to see change. Most couples do not conceive in the first 3 months. And then what is she and her husband going to do? They're going to be on their own, back to square one. Where do you go from that at that point? I don't know what other program she was considering. I'm just here to tell you that for me, I designed my program to be a lifetime program for a reason, because I need to support members for an extended period of time throughout their journey. And I want to be available not just for one child, but for as many children as you want. I want to be here to support you for that. Before we hear more from Katie, a couple of points that I just want to highlight. One is, I was fortunate enough that by the time she started working with me, we had some, pretty good answers as to what was going on for them. But you can't heal what you don't know is there and what you don't investigate. Their original doctors didn't really bother to do any significant testing to find out that she had Hashimoto's and endometriosis and autoimmune PCOS. Like, they were just saying, oh, AMH looks good, you're good to go, right? So we need to understand, you all need to understand that if you're not doing extensive testing and research and investigation, you're not going to get the answers that you deserve. That is number one. My second point for you is, with all her multiple autoimmune conditions going on, it definitely takes a different approach and ongoing support and a comprehensive, integrative approach to really see appropriate change, not just in the short term, but also in the long term. And we need to understand that. You all need to understand that. Because if you just can continue to do the conventional treatments and get the conventional support that you're looking at and probably working with, you're going to end up in the same place that you have been, which is right where you are. So we need to change that for all of you. Okay? Let's continue to hear from Katie.
3 months isn't going to cut it. But we joined Dr. Sklar's program. We interviewed with Danielle, and she was wonderful. And it was funny because I joined Dr. Sklar's program, I think in like March or April of 2024. And, what I had kind of decided myself to do in February of that year is start an AIP diet, because I had heard about it. And sure enough, that's what Dr. Sklar prescribed. He said, I went you on an AIP diet. And, honestly, I think that was what ultimately made the difference in our fertility, is me going on the AIP diet, because I saw my TPO antibodies drop 30% in like 3 months just by being on the AIP diet. And then they worried that my endometriosis had come back after the laparoscopy that I had in 2023. So I went back in for another surgery in 2024. And I woke up, I looked at me, he said, "That's the cleanest pelvis I've ever seen. What are you doing?" I said, "Well, I'm on an AIP diet right now." He's like, "That could be part of it." He's like, "Your autoimmune issues could be calming down, and that could be why your endometriosis is virtually gone." He's like, "I can't even see the lesions operate on last year, like the scar tissue from everything." So
that's a win, right there. So yeah, look, she was already on the right path, but she needed ongoing support and she needed motivation, right? Like I was there to keep her going. The fact that I was able to confirm with her that that was a diet I wanted her on as a place to start and to continue, that was valuable, right? Because that confirmed what she was already thinking. And it was supportive because it told her, okay, now I'm motivated to keep going. And then as you get through that, it's hard to keep going on that diet for an extended period of time. So we were there to massage it a little bit and support her through that process. But you could see that through that, you could see the inflammation in her body just starting to come down. And that's why her numbers started to change. She didn't just have an autoimmune thyroid. That was one variable, but she also had endometriosis and the autoimmune PCOS. And we're starting to see changes. And then once we completed and rounded out her plan, then we really see all the full changes that she was on her way and she was doing a great job.
And I'd also been taking the systemic enzymes per Dr. Sklar's suggestion. I think that had a role to play as well. So, so we had clean pelvis, that was great. No endometriosis. TPO antibodies were tumbling down and that was all good. And we actually had our first embryo transfer in August of 2024. And it worked, it worked beautifully. And we had it on a Thursday. And then the next day, Friday, I passed out. I was tired, but this pregnancy has been super smooth. I've gained no extra weight whatsoever, because I've been sticking to the AIP diet and, I feel like my body's getting exactly what it needs.
I'm going to take this opportunity right here first to talk about embryo adoption. Because of her husband's translocation, they decided that embryo adoption was the right choice for them. Just because you adopt an embryo doesn't mean that an IVF transfer is going to be successful. I believe that if Katie hadn't done all the work that she needed to do on her side, addressing her endometriosis, her thyroid antibodies, her immune system and inflammation, that I'm not convinced that her transfer would have been a successful one, even with an embryo adoption. So it just goes to show how much needs to go into something like this in all areas, right? To yield those results. And really a lot of credit and kudos goes to her for all the effort, not just to get pregnant, but also with the transfer and getting pregnant, understanding that she needed to do not just get pregnant, but stay pregnant. She needed to continue to manage her diet and her lifestyle to be able to maintain a healthy pregnancy, which is what she's done. Now, I do believe, and I have seen many, many times, that most couples with this translocation can conceive. It just can take a fair amount of time, which is what they've realized, and a concerted effort and patience. And so they chose this path. That's not a path that's usually discussed, by the way, by your IVF doctor. So I really appreciate the path that they took here to really make that happen. Let's continue to hear from Katie.
And, it's funny, I'm a little bit older at 36, and I feel like the doctors are like, how old are you? I don't think this pregnancy is going too well for you to be as old as you are. But yeah, it's been a really, really awesome experience. And, we're excited. We have a growth ultrasound in cheeks, and baby's good. Yeah, I think we would have gotten some answers, because I think ultimately we uncovered a lot of really, helpful, factual reasons why we couldn't get pregnant, but it took so long. Just the traditional method of working with doctors, Western medicine doctors, just takes so long. And if we had started with a fertility coach, 6 years ago, which, my husband would never have gone for, but multiple thousands, no. But I wish we would have, because it would have just been so much faster, because we would have known from the get-go that I had Hashimoto's and probably caught my TPO antibodies, at less than 100 instead of 190 when we did. And, I had to work very, very hard for years to just heal myself and get myself back to a baseline that if we had started working with a fertility coach 6 years ago, I may not have had to work nearly as hard, if that makes sense.
It makes sense. Makes sense to me. The reality is anyone who's tried for as long as they have to become pregnant and have a family, it shouldn't take that long. It shouldn't take the amount of years that they've been through to get through the system, to get the proper testing, proper understanding and knowledge for what's going on with them, and more importantly, the proper support, right? It just took too long, and it doesn't have to. And I want all of you to know you can get support sooner. You can make change sooner. You can have the results like she had much faster. And she recognizes that now. And because of the HOPE program, I'm here for her the next time when she's ready. If that's in a year or two, we're here for her, ready to help her get pregnant the next time as well, to hopefully make that process a lot smoother. And who knows, maybe we can do it with their own egg and their own sperm. That is my goal, my dream for them, my wish for them. Fingers crossed for that. Katie's story proves what's possible. Even after 7 years of trying, even with multiple diagnoses, even when doctors give up, you don't have to. I want to invite you to book your free fertility assessment now. Let's dig deeper, looking at everything that you've been through and create a strategy that actually works for you. This is your invitation to hope. Click the link below and let's write your story, your success story. So until the next video, stay fertile.